Hi, everyone, and welcome to Surviving UX, the place for you to celebrate your early onset UX-induced dementia. I'm your host, Jessamyn Edwards. Meg is momming very hard right now and will join us for our next episode. Today, we have the pleasure of a co-host who has been in the biz for about a decade. She started out working in Congress as a communications staffer, went on to work in branding, and now serves as the UX lead in the design department of the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Yes, the government agency founded by Elizabeth Warren to regulate consumer finance after the housing crash, where she has been for the last 7 years. Please welcome Jessica Schafer.
Thank you so much. Really
Hey,
excited
Jessica.
to be here.
Yay,
Hi.
I'm so glad to have you. So tell me, how was your week this week?
Doing good. I think, we're coming to the beginning of the second quarter of the year, which is, I don't really think about my schedule so much in quarters, but I do feel like work and life is ramping up significantly.
Yes.
Coming out of winter, coming out of, the days are longer, people are kind of more active. They're realizing that they want their projects done. So a real increase in activity across
I think
the board,
the pressure's on too, because summer's like right around the corner. And I think a lot of people want to go have a summer vacation. And so they're like, let's wrap this up so that I can have a summer break and not be dealing with you.
This is where I think we're entering the intense time of year. So getting ready for that.
So speaking of intensity, you are based out of New York City. You've been a UXer almost exclusively in New York City. Is that right?
That's right. Though, I work, since I work for the federal government, I'm really my focus is very much DC and government things. But yes, I've been in New York for the last decade.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. How would you describe UX culture in DC versus, in New York versus other places? Have you been out to the Bay and kind of talked to UX people out there, or had, coworkers who had Bay experience and come in? What have you picked up on any differences?
Yeah, I think one of the big differences is maybe pragmatism.
Okay.
I definitely think that, and maybe that's just a kind of East Coast, West Coast thing. There's plenty of big dreamers out here. But I do think that, especially in New York, maybe also kind of in the public sector where I'm focused, there's a very kind of pragmatic, how do we deal with what's on the ground and making it better and improving, this situation in front of us. Also, when I worked in the private sector UX here in New York, a lot of our clients were finance related, established people in the market. And so it was a lot of very kind of practical, how do we make this communication better, more effective, if it's a letter that a company is sending to alert somebody about something. So kind of what I might call a little bit more, practical UX. Whereas I think when I go out to the Bay Area, or I talk to friends from out there, or even, I have a few folks on my staff who are more West Coast based, I think they're a little bit more, how can this thing I'm doing revolutionize an entire marketplace, or something like that?
A disruptor approach.
Yeah, the whole disruption thing, which, fun, exciting, love that too. But I think that there's not quite as much space for that, or I think much more incrementally about how to make change.
I'm right there with you. I definitely get very nervous around disruption. I'll share a story. So recently I watched somebody present a project, and they weren't using certain elements of the design system. They went very custom. And as a slave to the design system that I've been using for the past 4 years, I was really thrown off, and I was almost surprised how much it bothered me to see someone do something totally custom, have it shipped, and then not only have it shipped, but have it be totally held up and celebrated as this huge innovation.
Yeah.
And I was so taken aback because I thought how much energy we pour into like like regulating and governing design
Hmm.
to make sure it adheres to the system. So what's your
Hmm.
take on that? Like, have you ever had designers go rogue and propose something that's really out of left field, or is that something you encourage?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Kind of my design team has developed over the time that I've been with in my current position, from a time when we were really establishing our design system to today, where we have a pretty strong design system. And so it has been interesting to see that development. And I would say, like, today, we are very try and work very closely within our design system. It is maybe relatively flexible in maybe a little bit more so than some other design systems, but we have a pretty strong foundation that we work off of. And again, a little bit of that public sector pragmatics. We know that we're going to have to keep maintaining everything that we build.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so
That was my first thought
we
when I
hurt
saw this. I was like, who's going to maintain this thing when this
yes,
guy
yes,
jumps ship?
this entirely new thing. And so I think, we want to make space for that, and we want to grow the design system and make sure there's flexibility. And, first and foremost, we're trying to meet the user needs of whatever product or piece that we're building. So if the design system doesn't work for the problem we're trying to solve, then we need to grow the design system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely encouraging of that, but at the same time, we have the system for a reason, for those long-term maintenance reasons, for that building brand trust and familiarity. People always talk about design being intuitive, but I think that really just means it's familiar and
Yes.
findable and legible.
Right.
And design systems really help support all of that kind of behavior. So I'm pro design system, while still trying to make space for it to grow and evolve, because it can't be too rigid.
I feel like what I discovered about myself when I had that reaction was that I'm extremely rigid. I was shocked. I was shocked at my own reaction to
Well, it's
seeing
great to
somebody like innovate. Like, what the hell
yeah.
is this? And
It's
I'm
fun
like,
to have
wow.
those moments, though, and there have been times, specific projects where I have encouraged designers to try something completely different. Like, what happens in this space if you start completely fresh, don't think about anything that we've built before? Like, what if you were just making this from scratch? And we come back to the design system after that, but I think that type of that can, in some projects, be really valuable to kind of shake things up and make sure we're not just putting the same boxes in the same places, because we always have.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see that reaction in yourself. And I've definitely had moments like that when I think more recently has happened when a project idea has been proposed to me that seems completely unlike a kind of space that we've worked in before, or I feel like, would somebody expect that of us? Why are we building that?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things to like challenge yourself around your kind of preconceived notions of what your team is for or can do, or
Yes. Who do
and so
you
I think
think
it's
you
useful.
are?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's useful to be challenged in those ways,
Oh,
as much as I respect the foundation of kind of that we've built.
so with that said, I want to take a pause because we have a very special person who's joined us. Meg, hello.
Hello, hello. Sorry to be so unprofessional and just pop
No,
into this podcast
I'm so happy that you're
mid-conversation.
here.
I
I'm
love it.
I'm really happy that you slid into the live podcast mid
Well, I
recording.
will say that I'm so impressed that you started right on time. You started right on time. Fantastic.
Well, actually, I started on time because I was so terrified of being late. So I had an eye on the clock all morning. But Meg, so this topic that we're discussing is kind of like adherence to design system versus like going rogue, innovating, putting something out there crazy and wild. Have you ever had the experience of either seeing someone else do that or you try to do it yourself?
I feel like the thing that I experience a lot, or I did experience a lot, and maybe this was when I was at a company that maybe was a little bit less mature at this stage of their UX development, is people just coming in and being like, "That old system, we're not doing that anymore. We're creating a brand new system,
Oh
and this is now the
no.
system that you're using." So it's like it's almost as if it's not just going rogue, but it's like also going rogue, and now you have to abide by this new system as well.
Hmm. I often
That's
feel
pretty
like sometimes
frustrating.
it's like maybe like wasted effort because it's like, what's so bad with the old one? Like so many times I've had that feeling like people are like, oh, we got to get rid of that. We got to get something new. Like I've seen that especially with icons. I can't tell you how many
Yeah,
times
for
someone's
sure.
like, we're redoing the icons. And I'm like, we are? Because that seems like a lot of work to go hunt down all these icons and swap them out. And what's the big difference? Like, are we really getting anything out of it? Like, was are the old icons that bad? But I guess they were, so they had to go. It's like, could we spend time on anything else besides these icons? I don't
That's
know.
the thing, right? It's always about the why. Like if you're going to do a rebranding or a new system or whatever, like making sure you know why.
Why? Yeah, to defend yourself against
Um,
naysayers like me.
I
Ugh, gosh.
think all UX people always want to know why. So maybe just defending yourself against any UXer.
Hmm. So Jessica, you are a design manager, which means you have to be accountable not just for your own productivity, but for the productivity of your team. So what is the toughest part about being a design manager? I can
Yeah.
only imagine.
Um, you know, initially the hardest part is kind of the same thing that if you read a lot of management books, this is what they say, and it is true. If you enjoyed being an individual contributor, it's hard to let go of that.
Oh,
So I will just say that as a starting place. Like, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got when I first became a manager was someone telling me, okay, you can't expect everyone on your team to be mini Jessicas.
uh-huh,
You're not going to turn them into designing exactly like you designed.
uh-huh.
They are not just extensions of you, and really like celebrating that fact and making space for my team to approach problems differently than I would.
Hmm.
So that I think, that's probably part of being any type of manager of humans, is that kind of transition from the person who, like, I really enjoy being a designer,
Yeah.
and enjoy doing that work and getting in there. And that's not what you want your manager to do. That's
Hmm.
not what they
So
should be doing.
do you ever
Um,
come up behind people and kind of say like, hey, move that over there and make that bigger? And like, do you get in
I
there and pixel push?
I try not to. I try not to. I try very hard. And I do think so. I would say, like, kind of on a couple of years, I do think that is probably one of the things that is most challenging is kind of timing as a manager, knowing when to nudge, when to support, when to step in versus let a project team solve a problem themselves.
Hmm.
Um, I trust everybody on my team, but how am I signaling that trust and providing that space for them at the same time as, like, providing some oversight and my opinion and making sure that like you say, I'm accountable for what the team is producing. So making sure that we are staying on track and doing and producing good quality work. So it's a balancing act, but one that is getting easier, maybe.
Yeah. Are
um,
you hands off or hands on, would you say?
I would say that I wonder what my team would say. I think I'm hands off, but maybe that's because I know, like, my own internal struggles. Um,
Yeah.
so
Meg, what's your
yeah,
preference? Do you prefer like
Well,
a hands-on manager or hands-off? I like hands-on. I want them up on me.
hard to say. One question I have though about this like, shaking that like I see outlook do any of our managers, have you guys ever worked for a manager who hasn't come up through the IC route? Or, and like,
Hmm.
where do those people come from if they're not coming from that? And I guess maybe the ones that I have just, it's been so long since they were an individual contributor
Yeah.
that they don't feel
Yeah.
like that's like part of their thing anymore. And I guess, like, you know, Jessica, like, do you think you'll ever kind of like shake that as part of being your like identity? Not shake it in like a bad way, but like, do you think
Yeah.
you'll think of yourself as like purely a manager and not like having this like IC history? Or I don't know. I guess I'm curious, like, where do managers come from if they're not individual contributors first?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have not had a manager who wasn't an IC first, but I have some colleagues who manage teams where their expertise was in a very small part of what
Mm,
the team they manage does.
I see. Okay.
And so certainly they manage people who they didn't have the same type of IC
Mm,
experience that the people they manage have. So I think that's probably the closest I've come to
totally.
seeing that. And I could certainly imagine something like that in the future if I moved, if I move in a more strategic direction, for example, and working with people that are more in a business analyst realm. I don't know if that's a thing I want to do, but it's certainly a thing that I could see happening.
Mhm.
So I think maybe it's that kind of more lateral move rather than direct up from
Right.
IC. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like a lot of the people that or, as you get higher, you're right, you do start to like manage people who aren't in your area of expertise, and you kind of you're needing to have more managerial transferable skills as opposed to like specific like design or specific research skills
Exactly,
that
exactly. I mean, a
that
lot
you
of the
have.
work ends up being about practical work to set my team up for success. Like in my world, that means I spend a lot of time understanding and tracking contracting and procurement issues. Um, and I'm doing that for a design team, but that's not necessarily design management as much
Mm,
as just trying to be a good manager and make sure the team has the support that they need.
right.
What's your secret weapon for handling like a lack of motivation or productivity? And if you see someone on your team really just screwing up or just not really, they're kind of checked out, do you have like a go-to technique?
I think my go-to technique there is attention. Like I said, I am a bit. I think that I'm a bit more hands-off as a manager. But when I see somebody, and I think of that as just kind of like uh, yeah, there's something's going on there, whether
Yeah.
that's there's a distraction, there's a frustration, there's something happening there. And so my kind of initial step is attention. Of course I'm checking in with folks on a regular basis, but this is somebody who I need to spend a bit more time on. So I would say first attention, and second change of pace. Like what happens if how do they react if I give them a small but different type of piece of work? If they
Mm-hmm.
can just change their focus, does that kind of perk them up and get them back on track, or are there still issues developing? And then that tells me there's something larger happening there. So I think that's kind of those two pieces is my go-to. I've been very lucky in that for the most part, I haven't had people be disengaged. I certainly, however, I think, we've all seen during the pandemic, but also other difficult times, resilience, people just get tired and burned out. And it's not so much that they're not still engaged in the but more at like a 60% level,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just stepping down. And so I think that's a place where knowing when and how it can make space for people to, like sometimes life is life.
Yeah.
And they need a little bit of time to deal with other things. But yeah, so time and attention. The
Yeah.
other thing that I struggle with, however, is like you have to be direct in these
Yeah.
situations. Another great piece of advice, this is just a common piece of advice, is the compliment sandwich doesn't work. Uh,
Oh, really?
don't
Mm,
don't give people the compliment sandwich. And it's a really strong impulse. Like you want to set somebody up, you're a big fan of theirs. Here's the thing that you'd like them to change, but don't worry, like in generally, you're still a good person. And like, they're not going to come away with that from like really, a lot of people will miss out on what you actually want them to be hearing.
Ouch.
And so I do work on trying to be, when it's necessary, be direct, so that, you're helping the person. Let's cut down on the number of back and forths we have about this issue. How many times we need to discuss it and bring it up if we can just be direct the first time or second time.
Wow. That's impressive. I think you're the first person I've ever heard say that
Oh yeah,
doesn't work. Cause that's I feel like that's almost like a given. Like it's
really, and of course, also the thing about managing humans is all humans are different. And so some people might really respond to that approach. But I guess I would, again, thinking about management that works for me, and probably couching it in like, what are my natural tendencies and where do I need to push myself as a manager? I think I do need to push myself towards being more direct because I want to be a very nice person. I like to think I am a very nice person. And I have a kind of sense of like, oh, if I'm too direct, then I'm being mean to this person. And trying to remember like, how do I not waste our time? How do I not prolong the agony of whatever this piece of criticism is? And just like, let's take the Band-Aid off. Let's get to the point. And then we can work on solving whatever the thing is together. I'm a supportive and nice, et cetera. So like trying to find a way that I'm nudging myself in the right direction, same as I'm trying to help and nudge my team.
Are you ever tempted to just straight up fire somebody? And you're just like, I just want him out. I don't want to coach. I want him gone.
I love what you said earlier about like, if there were just like a bunch of Jessicas that you could manage, or I would love to manage a bunch of Megs. Like I know exactly what I would say,
right? Exactly.
And when I would fire me, but yeah, Jessica, that's such a funny question.
Yeah. I mean, come on, there's got to be a point where you're just like, I'm sick of this crap.
Yeah, of course. I would be lying to say that never comes up. Of course.
Gosh.
It's not. Hiring is really difficult.
Yeah.
So firing is not a great solution unless it's just a really bad situation, in which, of course, there are definitely circumstances where
what would you say makes hiring so difficult, in your perspective, in your view? Is there any one thing?
Is there any one thing? I don't know. There's a lot of things. Two immediately come to mind. One is we're so segmented in our media and consumption of information just as a society right now, that getting the word out about your opportunity to as broad and diverse an audience as possible is time and effort, and experience of having done it before, and relationship building. That's a whole that's a really big effort, and I think it's important to try and do as much as possible, but I recognize that that's a real investment of time that I often don't have.
Speaking of this, Jessica, I did want to give you a chance to promo your open position on your
team. It's true. I am actually hiring for my team right now, though sadly the position closes on April 4th. So depending on when this goes out, it was only the job was only open for a short period of time. But yes, I certainly encourage people to check out usajobs.gov, which is where you can find all kinds of government jobs, and working in the public sector rocks.
Really?
So I'm a big fan.
Okay.
But I would just come back to, I'll come back to, I think the second piece or reason why hiring is difficult is onboarding. Doing onboarding well, bringing somebody into your organization, allowing them time to get their feet under them, but also challenge them, make them part of your team, have them learn your design system, et cetera. All of that is time and investment. So, the transition between losing somebody who had institutional knowledge and having somebody in their place who also has at least some amount of institutional knowledge, that's a really big gap. And I would say that's a solid, at least in my world, that's a solid 9 months to a year gap.
Right.
Because I feel like so much like as a job seeker, sometimes I'm like, this sucks for me. This is the worst. And I have no ability to like see it from the other side of the people hiring. Because you guys are the ones telling me no, and you guys are the ones not you specifically.
Fair, no.
You know, the hiring people are like the ones ghosting you. And it's just so frustrating. So it's good to hear from your perspective and to kind of put things in perspective that hiring. And of course I've been on the other side too, but but I'm not often on the other side. So it's good to know it sucks on both sides. Or
You're suffering all around.
Suffering everywhere.
Awesome. True. I think we have time for one more question. Meg sometimes does these rapid fire questions. Meg, think of one of your rapid fires.
What's a ridiculous term that people in UX use that maybe just sound ridiculous to somebody outside of our profession or life?
Well, I mean, hamburger menu is one of those things. Whenever I say that to someone who isn't a designer or thinks about interfaces, they're like, what do you mean?
That's great.
And it's so obvious to me. But that's one of my favorites.
Aren't those really maligned? Like, haven't they been proven to just be really unusable?
I wonder. I feel like you still see a lot of them. Frankly, there's still one on my website at certain widths. But I think now they feel pretty common. The thing that I really dislike though is when somebody uses something clever in place of the hamburger icon, like, uses their logo up in the corner. Like, you had to know to click on the like funny little, it's like, come on, if we're going to hide the menu in that way, let's at least use the icon that everybody
I feel like
uses.
you need some affordance.
Yes, exactly.
But I think what it is like menu works better, or just like words, right?
Yes, exactly.
But then you go to a restaurant website and you click on something that says menu, and you're thinking of getting something totally different. So
exactly.
I think, it's like it's all got problems.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this week. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. And Meg, I'm so pleased you can get away from your baby and make time for this podcast. So everybody listening, thank you for listening. And we would love to hear from you. Write us at survivingux@gmail.com and have a great week.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Surviving UX is hosted and edited by Jessamyn Edwards and Meg Kramer. Our theme music is, among other things, the on-hold music for Cisco Phones, Opus No. 1 by Tim Carlton and Derek Deal. We'd like to give a special thank you to Jessica Schafer, our co-host this week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.